What is up? Hey guys, am I live? Think so. What's up, Philip? Nice of you to join. Hey, Katie, glad you could join. What's up, DD? Hey, Patrick, glad you guys could join. What's up, Petrie? Petrie? Hey, Nickly. Hey, Nikki. Not Nickly. What's up, Raymundo? Hello. Hey, it's your boy Chris. What's up, Chris? But you are on time. You are very much on time. Oh my god, remember you guys like when I had whenever I have my VPN on, like the stream would lag and stuff like that. Like we've always had that problem, right? Well, turns out last week I streamed the entire time with the VPN on and there was no problem. So, it looks like it was my old computer all along. Man, this new computer is so good. Yeah. So apparently with this computer I can turn on the VPN and I'm fine. So, yeah, I've been falsely like denigrating Comcast for giving me like bad internet connections, but it's not. Yeah, it's not them. It's not the VPN. It was my old computer. So I think we're good on that front. I don't think we're gonna have any more like stream problems. Yeah, I just had a shitty computer. Doop, doop. Great camera angle. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just lowered it. It was a little bit higher. I lowered it. Yeah. So you're like a little bit more at eye level. I think you're yeah, the camera like is like straight at eye level right now. Dum, dum, dum. We are almost to the end of the story. We are. The next story is yeah, it's Tianlong Babu. Tianlong Babu. I don't know how to pronounce it. Um but the English translation is like semi demigods and semi devils or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird translation. Hey, what's up, Empress Mermaid? Thanks for the donation. Thank you so much. Yeah, so the next story is demigods and semi-devils. But we got 3 more chapters to go. I'm describing your shitty computer? Yeah, you should buy a new one. So yeah, so apparently if you have an old computer, your internet connection may be affected. So yeah, probably something to do with the um probably like the new chipset for what do you call it? What do you call the Ethernet? There you go. Like the new chipset for like the Ethernet stuff on the motherboard. What did you miss? You didn't miss anything. Yeah, so I didn't know that getting a new motherboard can be so good for your internet connection, but apparently it is. All right. Before we start, I got some food. Hold on. Look at this. Oop. Yeah. This is like, I don't know, this is like a salt and seaweed flavor, I believe. So we shall see. I look too tall to go under the 12-foot 4-inch bridge now. Okay. All right, what is this thing? Ooh, it's like a ring. See that? It's potato chip. It's a potato chip and seaweed flavor. Pretty good. Oh. Not bad. It's like eating Lay's, but with a different texture and a different shape. Not bad. Looks like round Fritos. It's more like round Lay's with a little bit of a seaweed flavor. Eat them snacks close to the mic. Yeah. Can I wear them like rings? They're too small for my finger. Actually. Oh no, look at this. Yeah. I can do that with my pinky. Ah. Hmm. Oh. Oh, now my pinky's dirty. Ew. Which country am I living in? I'm living in the United States of America. The great United States of America. The best country in the world. Is this nutritious? Probably not. This does not seem nutritious at all. Yeah. All right. Shall we get started? Okay. I think it's going to be a momentous chapter today. Yeah, since we only have 3 left. And this chapter is named Annihilation, so probably some shit's going down. Alright, so what happened last week? So last week, our hero, Ling Hu Chong and Ying Ying, they're tied up in the Mute Granny's palace, or her place. I don't think she lives in a palace. So they're tied up in her place, and 8 of their allies come, okay? And 8 of their allies come, and they see them tied up. And you would think, oh, they're allies, so they must, so it must be that they're gonna save the Ling Hu Chong and Ying Ying, right? But they don't. So they don't save the 2. They actually plan to kill them and then steal the antidote from Ying Ying, right? So apparently the only reason they respect Ying Ying so much was that she supplies them with the antidote to the 3-corpse brain pill every year, okay? So this pill, every year they have to take this medicine so that the worm doesn't burrow into their brains, okay? Because everyone has ingested this poison, this 3-corpse brain pill, right? And every year they have to take the medicine so that they don't die, or I don't think they die, but they like since the worm burrows into their brain, they'll be like it'll be super painful and like they'll go crazy, like they'll go super crazy. So, and it's revealed that Yue Buchun, Ling Hu Chong's master, told those 8 people to steal the antidote. Okay, and in return, he'll give them the evil resisting sword manual. Okay, so this was a plan by Ling Hu Chong's master, that dastardly guy Yue Buchun, right? So these weren't the most loyal people. Ling Hu Chong. So Ling Hu Chong pretended that he had the evil resisting sword manual, right? And those 8 people, they ended up killing themselves over it. So Ling Hu Chong and Ying Ying, they escape. They run into the Mute Granny, okay? And then Ling Hu Chong, now that he has his sword, he can best her, and then he ties her up. Then later on, they meet Monk No Commandment, who's the husband of the Mute Granny. And Ling Hu Chong, he tells him to rescue her, right? But to prevent her from running away, he tells him to take her to an inn and then strip her naked. That way, she can't run away, right? She doesn't want to run outside because she's naked. Monk No Commandment thinks that this is a good plan, and then he runs off to execute it. And there you go. That's what happened last week. How's that? Yue Buchun is a son of a turtle. He's such a son of a turtle. All right. Boop, boop, doop, doop, doop. All right, here we go. Chapter 38, Annihilation, Part 2. Alright, it goes. They then went forward for dozens of feet before seeing a woman. So they is Ling Huchong and Ying Ying, I believe. Yeah. They then went forward for dozens of feet before seeing a woman running from the west towards the east. The ground was spacious and vast, and there was nowhere for them to hide. That person saw Ying Ying and was startled, and she quickly went up to them to pay her respects. Divine Sex's Heaven Wind Hall's fragrant master Sang San Yang, paying my respect to Sacred Lady. Long live the chief, unify the Qianghu. Oh, that's a big title. Ying Ying nodded her head a few times. After that, an old man came out from the east and walked quickly towards Ying Ying. He bowed before her to pay his respect. Qin Wei Bang also pays my respect to Sacred Lady. Chief revives the sacred sect and benefits the common people. Elder Qin, you're also here, Ying Ying said. Yes, Qin Wei Bang acknowledged. Your lowly servant received Chief's order to find information in this area. Fragrant Master Sang, what news have you found out? Reporting to Sacred Lady and Elder Qin, early morning today, subordinate was at Linfamy, and I saw 60 to 70 people from Songshan School on their way to Huashan, Sang Sanyang reported. Of course they're going to Huashan, Qin Weibang said. Why are Songshan School's people going to Huashan for? Ying Ying asked. Chief obtained the news that after Huashan School's Yue Buchun became the Five Mountains School's headmaster, he didn't want to be in a disadvantageous position compared to our sacred sect. So later on, he gathered all the disciples of the Five Mountain School to Huashan. It seems like he's going to attack the Darkwood Cliff, Qin Weibang answered. Okay, looks like Yue Buchun wants to attack the demon sect. Is this true? Ying Ying inquired while she was thinking. This old traitor Qin Weibang is really sly. The capture of the Hangshan School's people is most likely the order he received from Dad. He's probably the one in charge, but he's distancing himself from this matter. But the words of that Sang San Yang didn't seem to be made up. It seems there's something else going on here. She continued, Master Ling Hu is the headmaster of the Hangshan School. Why didn't he know of this matter? That's really strange. Subordinate already checked Taishan and Hangshan School, and they're already moving towards Huashan. Hangshan School is the only one which hasn't moved yet. Left Protector Xiang sent us an order. He said Elder Bao Dachu is leading some underlings to go to Hangshan's other courtyard to investigate their movements. He also ordered me to stay close to liaise with him. Subordinate is still waiting for the message from Elder Bao, Qin Weibang said. Ying Ying and Ling Huchong looked at each other, and they were both thinking, Bao Dachu going to Hangshan's other courtyard is most likely true. This Qin Weibang isn't concealing anything. Could it be he's telling the truth? Qin Weibang bowed towards Ling Huchong and said, Your lowly servant is just following orders. I'm asking for Headmaster Ling Hu's forgiveness. Ling Huchong cupped his fist, returning the propriety. Young Lady Run and I are going to get married within the next few days. Ying Ying gasped in surprise, and her whole face turned red, but she didn't deny it. Ling Huchong continued, Elder Qin received the order from my wife's father, so we as juniors should carry the burden. Liaise definition? To liaise means to communicate with. To communicate with. Like a liaison is a liaison is like a person who's communicating between two parties. Okay, to liaise would be to communicate between one party and another. So like he ordered me to stay close to communicate with him. Like to act as the middleman between two parties. Liaise. Liaise. Yeah. Establish a working relationship, typically in order to cooperate on a matter of mutual concern. Like communicate, collaborate, cooperate. Qin Weibang and Sang Sanyang turned happy, and they happily said, "Congratulations!" Ying Ying turned around and walked away. She's embarrassed. Left Protector Xiang urged Elder Bao and I repeatedly not to be rude towards the Hangshan School people. We only have to find the information, and we don't have to play rough. Subordinate has followed this order, Qin Weibang said. Suddenly there was a girl's voice behind him, laughing and saying, Master Ling Hu's sword art is matchless in this world. Left Protector Xiang told you not to resort to violence for your own good. Ling Hucheng lifted his head and saw a lady come out from among the trees. She was the Five Poison Sect Chief Blue Phoenix. Wait, the Five Poison Sect Chief Blue Phoenix. He laughed and said, Big sister, you're well. Big brother, you're also well, Blue Phoenix said to Ling Hucheng. She then turned her head towards Qin Weibang and said, If you're saluting me, then salute me. Why do you need to wrinkle your eyebrows for? I wouldn't dare, Qin Weibang replied. He knew there was poisonous things all over her body, and she was not to be trifled with. He rushed forward for a few steps and said to Ying Ying, I'd like to ask Sacred Lady, for what we should do next. Carry on according to the chief's order, Ying Ying ordered. Qin Weibang bowed and replied, Yes. Then Sang San Niang and he gave their proprieties to the three people and left. Blue Phoenix waited for those two people to walk far away before saying, The nuns from Hangshan School have all been captured. You're still not going to rescue them? We just came from Hangshan trying to catch up to them, but we haven't seen any sign of them along the way, Ling Hucheng replied. You're not going towards Huashan, so you're going the wrong way, Blue Phoenix told them. Going to Huashan? They've been captured and sent to Huashan? You saw them? Early yesterday morning at the Hangshan's other courtyard, I drank some tea when I tasted something strange, but I didn't say anything. Next thing, I saw people falling down one by one, so I pretended to be knocked out too, Blue Phoenix said. Using drugs against the five sylph sexes, Chief Blue, isn't that just asking for trouble? Said a smiling Ling Hucheng. Blue Phoenix smiled captivatingly. These bastards really don't know what's good or bad. You didn't offer them their poison back? Ling Hucheng asked. Why be so polite? There were two bastards who thought I've really been knocked out, so they came over to me, and they died on the spot from my poison. The other people were frightened, so they didn't dare to come over. They just said that I'm dead, and my entire body is very poisonous. After she said this, she giggled and laughed. What happened after that? I wanted to look at what they were doing, and have been pretending to be unconscious from the beginning. Later on, these bastards took many little nuns down from the Xiansang Peak. The one leading these people was none other than your master, Mr. Yue. Big brother, I see your master is very awful. You're the headmaster of the Hangshan School, but he actually led people to capture your disciples, grand disciples, old nuns, and little nuns. Isn't this deliberately trying to shame you? Ling Hucheng was quiet. Blue Phoenix continued. I could only look on in anger and was thinking of killing him with poison right there, but I kept on thinking that and wasn't sure that what you would think. If I really wanted to poison and kill him, it would after all only take a moment. You're down to 3 chapters and you haven't made me sing yet? Nah. Yes, you haven't. I'm pretty smart, right? I know a lot of definitions. I'm a genius. Absolute genius. You took into consideration my feelings. Thank you very much, Ling Huchang said. That's nothing. I heard them say that they were taking advantage of you not being at Hangshan, so they quickly moved to avoid giving you time to return there. There were also people who said you were really lucky that you weren't at the mountain, or else they'd have captured you too. And wouldn't they have less problems in the future? Hmm. Blue Phoenix narrated. With Big Sister there, if they wanted to capture me, it wouldn't be that easy. Blue Phoenix looked pleased, and she laughingly said, That's their good luck. If they dared to harm a single hair on your body, I can say my poison would have killed 100 of them. She turned her head around towards Ying Ying and said, Young Lady Ren, don't be jealous. I'm just like his family. I am also humble. I am very humble. Thank you. Thank you, Bigfoot. Ying Ying's face turned red and smiled. Master Ling Hu has also mentioned you often. He said you treat him well. That's excellent. I was afraid he didn't dare to mention my name in front of you. You pretended to be unconscious. So how did you get out? Ying Ying asked. They were afraid that there was poison on my body, so none of them dared to touch me. Someone said it would be better to chop me to make sure I'm dead. Some said to shoot projectiles at me, but even though they talked big, none dared to make a move. Then they just walked away. I followed them and saw them really going to Huashan. So once I got out, I went to look for Big Brother to tell you about this news, Blue Phoenix answered. We should really thank you for this, or else we would have been chasing them to the Darkwood Cliff and found out there's nothing there. Then we would have had to turn around and search for them again. Those old nuns, little nuns, not old, not small, middle-aged nuns, all would have suffered a lot. It's not good to delay this matter. Let's go to Huashan now, Ling Huchang said. The 3 of them turned towards the west and traveled at double speed to catch up, but they unexpectedly didn't see a single clue on their way. Right, so it looks like their master captured all the people from the Hangshan school, right? From Ling Huchang's school. And now they're all at the Huashan school. Probably a bad idea to join when you're not all caught up. Yeah, probably. You wouldn't understand anything. Ling Huchang and Ying Ying were both very worried, and they both thought, with several hundred people in their party, surely there must be people who have seen them. There must also be traces of them in the restaurants and inns along the way. Could it be this isn't the road that they took? On the 3rd day at a small restaurant, they saw 4 people from the Hangshan school. At this time, Ling Huchang had changed his appearance, and those people had not recognized him yet. Ling Huchang waited to eavesdrop on them and found out they were really going to Huashan. They looked jubilant, looking like they were gold, and there were gold and treasure on top of the mountain waiting for them. One of them said, Luckily, Marshal Brother Huang was friendly enough to tell us the news, and we were also lucky to be in Shansi, so we could come here quickly. I hope we arrive in time. Our martial brothers in Hangshan have really missed a good opportunity. Whoa, Joey, Jesus. That's a huge super chat. Thank you so much. This saga is longer than the Inagadavita. Inagadavita. I don't know what that is. What is the Inagadavita? Ling Huchang wanted to know why they were hurrying to go to Mount Huashan. What kind of scheme was afoot, but these four people did not mention anything along the way at all. Do you want me to poison and interrogate them? Blue Phoenix asked. Ling Huchang remembered how Mr. Mo Da treated him so generously, so he didn't want to bully these people. Okay, so these people are from the other Hangshan school, right? The one that Mr. Mo Da is the master of. Ling Huchong remembered how Mr. Moda treated him so generously, so he didn't want to bully these people. We'll arrive at Huashan soon enough. We'll know when we get there, so we mustn't disturb the grass and startle the snake. A few days later, at dusk, the three of them arrived at the foot of Mount Huashan. Ling Huchong had grown up at Huashan, so he was very familiar with the area. He said, "We'll go up from a small path behind the mountain. We won't meet anyone there." Between the 5 mountains, Huashan was the most rugged. The small path behind the mountain was actually a steep cliff, and there was no passable path. It was good that the 3 people's martial arts were very high, and they were able to go up the rugged cliff. With this method, they arrived at Mount Huashan's mountaintop at around 2 in the morning. Ling Huchong led the other 2 towards the Hall of Chi Principal. They saw the place was dark with not a single candle to be seen. They hid underneath a window to listen, but there was also no sound to be heard. Then they went to the disciples' residence, but there wasn't a single soul to be found there as well. Ling Huchang pushed open a window, went in and lit a candle to have a look. Inside the house was empty. The top of the table and the floor was all covered with dust. After going to a few other houses, they found that all the houses were in the same condition. It was obvious the disciples of Huashan had not returned to the mountain yet. It's a song by Iron Butterfly, a really long rock opera. Okay, gotcha. How long is that song? Blue Phoenix felt something was amiss. Where are those bastards who went up the mountain? They said they were coming up to Mount Huashan. Did they go somewhere else? Ling Huchang was surprised and hesitant as he remembered the day when he attacked Shaolin Temple. The temple was also empty, and they repeatedly met with dangers afterwards. Could Yue Buchun be using the same tactic again? But at this time, there were only 3 of them. Even if they were surrounded, it would be easy to get away. He was just afraid that the Hangshan disciples were being imprisoned in a very secretive place, and they had been tarrying for the last few days, so they might not be able to find them anymore. The 3 of them strained their ears to listen, but all they heard was the rustling of the pines, and the whole mountain was strangely calm. The song is like 17 minutes long. Holy shit. Is it a good song? Maybe I should listen to it. 17 minutes. Let's split up to look for them. After 2 hours, we'll meet here again, Blue Phoenix suggested. Okay, Ling Huchang replied. He believed that Blue Phoenix's skill in using poison was very high, and there would be no one who would dare to harm her. Uh-oh. I think she's in trouble. But he still advised, you don't need to fear other people, but if you come across my master, his sword is really fast. You must be careful. Blue Phoenix saw him speaking earnestly. Under the yellow flame, his concern was seen on his face. Her heart was moved on seeing this. Big brother, I'll definitely pay attention to your advice. She then pushed the door to go out. Ling Huchang took Ying Ying to investigate everywhere around there. They had even gone to Tianqin Gorge, where the Yue Buchun husband and wife resided in, but they still had not seen anyone yet. This is really fishy. During the past, our Huashan school disciples were all over the mountain. There are always people left behind here to sweep the ground, but why? To sweep the ground, but why isn't there anyone here right now? Ling Huchang said. It's a good song, but it's better if I'm high on mescaline. Okay, gotcha. At the end, they had finally arrived at Yue Lingshan's room. That room was on the side of the Tianqin Gorge. It was situated very close to the Yue Buchun couple's room. As Ling Huchong got to the front of the room, he remembered of the past days when he frequently came here to take his little martial sister to go out and play or to practice sword. But today there was nothing to see, and he couldn't refrain from shedding his tears. He extended his hand to push the door open, but the planks were latched. In that moment, he hesitated, not knowing what to do. Ying Ying leapt over the wall, unlatched the planks, and opened the door. They went inside and lit the candle. The bed and table inside were covered by a layer of dust, and there was nothing on the wall. Even the common objects for girls like combs and dresses were not there. Okay, so it looks like it's all empty. Everyone's gone. Ling Huchang thought, after little Marshall's sister and Marshall brother Lin got married, they must have moved to another new house, and they didn't live here anymore. All her everyday items must have all been taken with her. He then opened up the drawers and saw some small bamboo baskets, stone marbles, cloth dolls, little wooden horses, and many other toys. Each of these things was not made by Ling Huchang, but they were the items the two of them had played with in the old days. She had neatly kept everything here. Ling Huchang felt sad, and he couldn't bear it anymore. Tears flowed and dripped down from his cheeks. Ying Ying quietly went out and slowly closed the door. Ling Huchang was reluctant to leave Yue Lingshan's room for a long time. Finally, he suppressed his feelings and blew out the candle and walked out of the room. Brother Chang, there is one place in Mount Huashan which has a great connection to you. Take me there, Ying Ying said. Ah, you're talking about the Cliff of Repentance. Wait a minute. Wasn't it called the Cliff of Contemplation? Why did they change the translation? All right, let's go have a look. He was slightly lost in thought. Then he said, but I'm not sure whether Grand Marshal Uncle Feng is there or not. Oh, are we going to meet Feng Qingyang, his old master? Not master, but like uncle master that taught him the Dugu 9 swords. He then led the way towards the Cliff of Repentance. Ling Huchang was very familiar with the path. Even though the place wasn't close, he got there very quick. On top of the cliff, Ling Huchang said, I was inside the cave. Suddenly, they heard two noises of weapons clashing from inside the cave. Both of them were startled, and they quickly walked nearer. Someone suddenly cried out, seemingly having been injured. Ling Huchang took out... Excuse me. Sorry, I had like 3 burps in a row. Ling Huchang took out his longsword and rushed forward first. He saw the sealed front entrance to the cave with sword moves engraving had been opened up, and there was a flickering of flame coming from the inside. Ling Huchang and Ying Ying entered the cave, and their hearts skipped a beat. There were dozens of torches inside the cave, and there were at least 200 people in there. They were all concentrating on looking at the sword moves engraving on the cave wall. Every single one of them was so absorbed that there wasn't a sound heard. When Ling Huchang and Ying Ying heard that miserable cry, they were expecting that inside the cave would either be pitch black, or there would be fierce fighting with blood spraying all over the place. But how could they have known that the back of the cave would be bright as day, and it would also be filled with people? The back of the cave was quite spacious, so even though there were 200 people there, they weren't too crowded. But with so many people being noiseless, just like corpses, they were really surprised to suddenly see this strange scene. Ying Ying slightly leaned on Ling Hucheng's left shoulder. Ling Hucheng turned around and saw her face was snow white, and there was fear in her eyes. So he extended his hand to softly embrace her waist. Then he saw each of these people had different clothes. After looking for a while, he realized that they were disciples from Songshan, Taishan, and Hangshan schools. Among them were some middle-aged people with gray hair. There were also some old people with long white beards. It was clear that many seniors from those three schools were also here. However, the people from Huashan and Hangshan schools were not seen among them. The people from these three schools gathered in their own groups and did not mix with each other. The Songshan school people were observing the wall where the Songshan school's sword moves were, while the Taishan and Hangshan schools people were also absorbing the parts of the walls where their own sword moves were. Ling Hucheng remembered that they had met with four Hangshan disciples along the way. They mentioned they had gotten news, and they were hurrying towards Huashan, that it was of the greatest luck. So it was all because they would have the opportunity to see the wonderful sword moves engraved on the wall at this cave. After some time, he saw among the Hangshan school people was a lonesome person with white hair looking at the stone wall with no expression on his face. This person was Mr. Mo Da. Ling Hucheng didn't know what to do, whether he should go up to pay his respect to him or not. Looks like I'm really having some throat trouble. Yeah. It's nothing. Just have some stuff. It's stuffy. Have some mucus on my throat. It's fine. Suddenly, a person from the Songshan school group angrily shouted, "You're not Songshan's disciple! Why are you looking at the drawings?" The one who said this was an old person wearing a dust yellow gown. He angrily glared at a middle-aged person with a tall and strong stature, while the long sword in his hand was pointed at his chest. That middle-aged person snorted and said, "When did I look at the drawings?" The old person from the Songshan school angrily shouted, "You're still thinking of denying it? Which school are you from? If you want to steal Songshan's sword art, then I don't care. But what are you doing looking at those moves to break the Songshan's sword art for?" At the same time that he shouted, 4 to 5 Songshan people immediately surrounded the middle-aged person and pulled their weapons out. "I know nothing of your honorable school's sword art, so what's the use of looking at those breaking moves for?" the middle-aged person argued. "You must be harboring some malicious intentions to be peering at the Songshan school's sword moves," the old person from the Songshan school replied. The middle-aged person put his hand on his sword handle. He said, "Five Mountain School's headmaster, Mr. Yue, is very kind, and he's allowed us to come and have a look at the sword moves on the wall, but he didn't limit us to which moves we can look at and which ones we can't." The old person from the Songshan school said, "You're thinking of harming my Songshan school. We won't allow you to." "5 schools have become one. At this time, there's only the 5 Mountains School. How can there be a Songshan school? If not for the 5 schools becoming one, Mr. Yue would never have permitted you to look at the sword moves in this cave," the middle-aged person said, and the old man was unable to reply back. A disciple of Songshan pushed the back of the middle-aged person's shoulder and shouted, "You're very good in turning things over." The middle-aged person reached back with his hand and flinged the other person's hand away. The Songshan disciples staggered and fell to the ground. At this time, a person from the Taishan school suddenly shouted, "Who are you, wearing our Taishan school uniform and mixing with us, trying to steal the Taishan school sword art?" A youngster wearing the Taishan school uniform hurriedly rushed out. A person nearest to the exit immediately moved and stopped. "Stop! Who are you making trouble here?" So even though the schools are all merged, okay, technically they should be one big school now. They're all still like clinging onto their old schools, right? They're all still like in different groups, so they're not united. That youngster stabbed out with his sword as he rushed forward. The person blocking the exit set his left palm out towards his eye. The youngster quickly retreated a step. The person blocking the exit shot his right hand out like the wind, again stabbing at his eye. The youngster's long sword was on the outside, so it was difficult for him to block, and he was forced to step back again. The person blocking the exit swept his leg. The youngster leapt up to avoid it. Then, with a pung sound, his chest had been hit by a palm, and he had fallen on the ground. From behind, 2 Taishan school disciples went up to detain him. At this time, the 4 Songshan school people surrounding that middle-aged person had attacked with their long swords. The middle-aged person swiftly and fiercely fought back, but his sword art didn't belong to the 5 Mountains Sword School. A few Songshan disciples watching on the side cried out, "This chap isn't from the 5 Mountain Sword Schools. He's a traitor, mixing in with us." With 2 fights going on, the quiet mountain cave had turned chaotic. Ling Huchang thought, "My master told these people to come here. It's not because he has a good intention. I'm going to tell Marshal Uncle Mo and ask him to lead his people out of here." Oh, so it looks like Yue Buchun told them to come here so that they would get into a fight, right? I think. "I'll tell him about the Hangshan School sword art once we get out of the cave." He immediately leaned on the wall to stay in the shadow as he walked near to Mr. Mo Da. He had only gone for a few dozen feet when suddenly a big rumbling sound was heard. It was as if the mountain had cracked. People were crying out in alarm. Ling Huchang quickly turned around and saw dirt and dust falling from around the cave's entrance. He didn't care about finding Mr. Mo Da anymore and was just wishing to go to Ying Ying. But with lots of people chaotically running away, swords brandished everywhere, dirt falling down around the cave, he couldn't see where Ying Ying was. He flew out from the cluster of people towards the cave's entrance, while dodging swords slashed at him. He shouted desperately, but he saw a massive rock which was around tens of thousands of catty, heavy, dropping on the cave's entrance, firmly shutting the cave in. In panic, he took a glance, and it seemed there was no crack to get out. So someone blocked the entrance of the door, okay? So everyone is trapped inside now. "Ying Ying! Ying Ying!" Ling Huchang shouted. Ying Ying answered, but it sounded like she was somewhere deep inside the cave. But with 200 people shouting in confusion, he couldn't hear her clearly. He thought, how come Ying Ying is inside? He thought for a while and he understood. Oh yes, when that big rock fell down, Ying Ying was standing on the cave's entrance, and she wasn't willing to run by herself, but she was thinking of me. I rushed back to the entrance to look for her, but she was rushing inside to find me. He immediately turned around to rush inside. Oh no, the trap was a trap. Right, Patrick. It was totally a trap. Totally obvious. Originally, there were dozens of torches inside the cave, but when the big rock fell down and with the confusion going on, there were some who threw their torches away. Thus, most of the torches had been extinguished. The whole cave was filled with dust, and all he could see was fuzzy yellow. He heard people shouting in alarm, "The cave's entrance has been sealed up! The cave's entrance has been sealed up!" There was also people who angrily shouted, "It's that traitor, Yue Buchun's plot!" Another person shouted, "That's right, that traitor deceived us to see his sword art." Dozens of people tried to push the big rock, but this rock was just like a small mountain. Even though dozens of people were forcefully pushing it, how could they even move it an inch? There was also someone who shouted, Quickly, leave from the tunnel." A few people had thought of this earlier, Around 20 of them were pushing each other, crowding the entrance to that tunnel. The tunnel was the one dug by the devil sex's elders years ago, with hatchets. Wait. The tunnel was the one dug by the devil sect elders years ago with hatchets, and only one person could go through it at a time. So with 20 people crowding together, how could they manage to go in? With this confusion, 10 more torches were extinguished. Oh, Patrick, you mean that this was a trap for the demon sect years before? True, true. Yeah, so the demon sect a long time ago were trapped in the same cave, right? So it looks like Yue Buchun just used the same trap. He used the same method to trap these people. But why would he want to trap these people? Why would Yue Buchun want to trap these people? Because technically, these people were people within his sect, right? Within his school. So Yue Buchun is supposed to be the master of everyone in this school. So why does he want to trap these people? Remember, these are all like elders and seniors, okay, in their respective schools. Two big men from the crowd used their strength to push the people away as they rushed towards the tunnel entrance. The tunnel's entrance was very narrow, and they hit each other, preventing each other from going in. The person on the right-hand side swiped his left hand, and the big man on the left cried out. A dagger was sticking out of his chest. The big man on the right-hand side pushed him away and entered the tunnel. The rest of the crowd pushed and shoved, all of them wanting to enter. Ling Hucheng had not seen Ying Ying yet, and he was feeling very worried. He also thought the devil sect's 10 elders had very high martial arts, but because of this plot, they were all buried in here. Today, I'm not sure if Ying Ying and I can get out of this difficulty. This would be very dangerous if my master is the one who arranged all this. He saw the crowd was at the tunnel's entrance, pushing and shoving. They were all anxious and frightened. Suddenly, a murderous intention popped into his head. These chaps are blocking me. I must kill them all. Then Ying Ying and I can escape from here. He lifted his long sword, wanting to start killing people. But he saw a youngster crouching on the ground with both his hands clutching his hair and his entire body shuddering. His face was ashen. It was obvious he was scared to death. Ling Hucheng took pity on him, and he pondered, he and I are friends in difficulty, and we've both fallen in this trap. We should cross the river in a boat together. Why should I kill him in anger for? He pulled back his long sword and put it across in front of his chest. Then he heard the 20-odd people at the tunnel's entrance shout, "Quickly, go in! Why aren't you moving? Not crawling in? Drag him out!" That big man's 2 feet were still outside, and it seemed the tunnel was blocked, but he wasn't willing to crawl back out. 2 people stooped down to grab that big man's feet and pulled him out. Suddenly, dozens of people called out in alarm because they had pulled out a headless corpse. The neck was covered with blood. This big man's head had unexpectedly been cut off by someone in the tunnel. At this time, Ling Hucheng saw a person sitting in the corner of the cave, and under the dusky flame he recognized that person to be Ying Ying. He was jubilant and quickly rushed there, but after only taking 2 steps, 7 to 8 people blocked his way. Currently, the cave was in chaos, and everyone looked like they had lost their reasoning, just like headless flies flying all over the place. There were some who crazily slashed their swords at random, some were beating their chests, crying, some were wrestling each other, and there were some who were crawling on the ground, going here and there. Ling Hucheng had squeezed out a few steps when he suddenly felt both of his legs being firmly embraced. He powerfully hit the top of that person's head, causing him to cry out, but he still didn't let go. Ling Hucheng shouted, "If you don't let go, I'll kill you!" Suddenly, the top of his calf hurt, as he had unexpectedly been bitten. Ling Hucheng was angry and surprised. He saw everyone was acting like they were crazy, and the torches inside the cave were getting less and less. Now only 2 torches were still burning, but they were already on the ground. Ling Hucheng called out, "Pick up the torches! Pick up the torches!" A fat Taoist laughed and stepped on a torch, extinguishing it. Ling Hucheng lifted his longsword and beheaded that person biting on his calf. Suddenly, everything was dark and nothing could be seen. The last torch had been extinguished. With the torches extinguished, everyone in the cave suddenly became quiet, as they were stunned by this change in situation. But after a short moment had passed, the mad shouting began again. Ling Hucheng thought, we have no chance of getting out of here alive today. It's lucky that I can die here together with Ying Ying. Thinking up to this point, he felt happy instead of afraid, and started going towards where Ying Ying was. After walking for a few steps, someone suddenly came towards him and hit him. This person had high inner energy, and the hit was swift and fierce. Ling Hucheng staggered back for a couple of steps after being hit and turned around for half a circle. He quickly turned back and slowly continued on his way to where Ying Ying was sitting at. With his ears straining to listen, he heard crying and shouting and dozens of weapons colliding. In the dark, with so many people frightened, most of them were like half crazy, and everyone was afraid, so they were slashing their weapons about to protect themselves. Some of them had a lot of experience or high internal energy, and they originally remained calm. But with the people beside them randomly swiping their weapons, and the mountain caves so crowded, also with no place to dodge in the darkness, besides wielding their own weapons, there was no other way. He heard weapons clashing, people crying out in pain around them, also injured people moaning and cursing. People need to just calm down. Just calm down, everyone. Ling Hucheng could only hear the weapons splitting the wind all around them. Even though his sword art was high, there was no way for him to use it properly, as he could be hit from any direction at any moment. He was feeling really worried, so he immediately swiped his longsword to protect his upper body. Step by step, he moved towards the cave wall. Once he reached it, he could lean on it while walking and avoid a lot of dangers, just like that person resembling Ying Ying leaning on the wall while sitting down. With that method of walking, he would be able to meet her soon. From where he was standing, he was still dozens of feet away from the cave wall, but the blades were like the forest, and the swords were like the rain. Every inch was fraught with danger, and every step was fraught with death. Ling Hucheng thought, if I die under the hand of a master, then it would be sweet, but in this situation, I can just get killed anytime by someone mysterious, and the one who killed me is probably some idiot who knows a bit of martial art only. Even if Hero Dugu lived again and met with this kind of situation, I'm afraid he probably wouldn't be able to find a way out. As he thought of Dugu Chubai, he was enlightened. That's right, in today's situation, if I don't kill someone mysteriously, then I'll be the one killed mysteriously. When I kill one, that'll be one less person to kill me. His longsword trembled out using the arrow-breaking stance of the Dugu 9 sword. His sword stabbed out to the front, back, left, and right. Once he used the sword stance, a few people around him cried out miserably and dropped to the ground. Oh no, he's doing the same thing. He's just killing everyone around him. He felt his sword enter the flesh of someone, and he heard that person cry out lightly. It was the voice of a girl. Ling Hucheng was greatly startled, and his hand became weak, and he nearly dropped his longsword. His heart was thumping. Was that Ying Ying? Did I just kill Ying Ying? He shouted desperately, Ying Ying! Ying Ying, is that you? But there was no sound coming from that girl. He was very familiar with Ying Ying's voice, and that light cry was not actually from her, and very easily distinguishable. But with many voices mixed inside the cave, the lightness of this girl's cry, his worried heart, and his chaotic mind, he felt that it was Ying Ying. He felt that it was Ying Ying, but at the same time also felt that it wasn't her. He called out again for a few more times, but there was still no answer, so he stooped down to feel around the ground. Suddenly a kick came flying in and kicked him squarely on his butt. Ling Hucheng flew up, and while his body was in mid-air, his left leg hurt as someone gave it a whip. He quickly used his left hand to cover his head, and with a bang, his arm along with his head had hit the top of the cave. As he was dropping back down, he felt his head, arm, and legs and butt were all covered in pain, like his entire body was about to be shattered into pieces. He calmed himself down and called out Ying Ying again for a couple more times. Hearing his own voice, he sounded hoarse, like he was crying. His heart was feeling miserable and desperate as he shouted, "I've killed Ying Ying! I've killed Ying Ying!" With his long sword slashing left and right, he rushed forward and killed a few people. In this clamor, he suddenly heard two chung chung sound. This was the sound of a Yao Qin, even though the sound of this Qin was light. In Ling Huchong's ears, they were just like thunder, startling him. He was rapt and quickly called out, "Ying Ying! Ying Ying!" So that was probably Mr. Moda with his thin sword. Right at this time, he wanted to go to where the sound of that Qin was coming from. But as he thought about it, the sound of the Qin came from some distance away. This 100 feet distance was 100 times more dangerous when compared to walking in Jianghu for 100,000 li. To be able to walk this 100 feet distance without dying was actually very difficult. The sound of the Qin was, of course, from Ying Ying. Oh, never mind. That was Ying Ying. Since she's all right, but then he mustn't throw his life away. Wait, this sound of Qin was, of course, from Ying Ying, and since she's all right, then he mustn't throw his life away. If the two of them couldn't die together, hand in hand, then they would suffer endless regret in the Nine Fountain. He retreated back for a couple of steps and leaned his back on the cave wall. He thought, this is much safer. Suddenly, he felt a strong wind of someone slashing his weapon, rushing at him. Ling Huchong thrust his sword out, but just as he moved his long sword, he immediately knew things were far from good. Clamor, like loud sounds. Clamor means like loud sounds, like chaotic sounds, like chaotic. Yeah, clamor. Like, I guess it means chaos. You can say that, right? In this chaos, he suddenly heard two sounds. In this ruckus. Oh, what happened to my... Why did it suddenly turn black? What happened? Yeah, racket, uproar, shouting, blah, 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 blah. Did it suddenly switch the dark theme? Google? What the hell? Okay. We can stick with that. The essence of Dugu Nine Swords was that looking at the flaw of the opponent's movements and attacking that point. Thrust later, but arriving first. One move to take victory, but in this dark cave, he couldn't even see his enemy or his enemy's movement. So how could he see the flaw in their movements? At this situation, the Dugu Nine Swords was completely useless. The long sword in Ling Huchong's hand had only thrust out for a foot when he hastily dodged to the left. Then he heard a breaking sound, followed by a crashing sound, and lastly a miserable cry. He guessed that person's weapon must have struck first against the wall and broke, and the broken weapon had then stabbed his own body. Ling Huchong heard that person had gone quiet, and guessed he must have died. I changed my answer to chaos. Wait a minute. Chaos works too, like in the tumult. Chaos works. Like a loud chaos? I think you're nitpicking there, Didi. Can I describe the ruckus? What do you mean? Oh, the ruckus? You want to hear? You want to hear the ruckus? This is the ruckus. This is what it sounds like in the cave. Okay. There you go. Ling Huchong heard that person had gone quiet, and guessed he must have died. He pondered, although my sword art is high, it is just like any other ordinary person in this dark cave. I just have to bear with it, patiently, and wait for a chance to meet up with Ying Ying. But he heard the sound of fighting, and the shouting had lessened, because at this time many people had been injured or killed. He quickly brandished his longsword in front of his body to form a sword net in case someone suddenly attacked him. The sound of the Yao Qin was intermittent, like the string was plucked one by one, and it was not making up any tune. Ling Huchang was again worried. Is Ying Ying injured? Or maybe she's not the one playing the qin. But if it's not her, how can there be another person who also has a qin? After a long time, the shouting finally stopped. There were many people moaning and groaning on the ground. Occasionally, there was a sound of weapon clashing coming from around the wall. Ling Huchang thought, the people who aren't dead are around the wall. These people must be masters in Wulin, and their thoughts were sharp. He shouted repeatedly, Ying Ying, where are you? The qin sounded a few times as if answering him. Alright, so anyone in the middle, they're all like on the ground moaning and groaning. But everyone who was smart, right, stayed on the wall. Right, stayed near the wall so they weren't hurt. Li Huchong flew forward. When his left foot landed, he felt something soft. He had landed on someone's body, and at the same time he felt the wind whistling as a weapon was slashing upwards. Because his internal energy was abundant, even though he couldn't see the enemy's weapon coming, he was still aware of it. He quickly used strength on his left foot and leapt back to the cave wall. He pondered, the ground is full of people lying down and some are injured. I can't go across. Then he heard the wind whistling caused by the people leaning their backs on the cave wall, slashing their weapons about to protect themselves. In this moment of time, a few more people were either injured or killed. Suddenly, an elder spoke. Friends, we've fallen into Yue Buchun's trap. We must work together to get out of here. We can't just swing our weapons around and kill one another. That's right, many people replied together. Yeah, finally, a voice of reason. When Ling Huchong heard their voices, he gathered there were about 60 to 70 of them. All these people had their backs to the wall, and they were standing motionless. One was because they had calmed down. Secondly, because temporarily they weren't worried about their lives, so they were able to calmly think things through. The elder said, I'm Taishan School's Yu Zhongzhi. Everyone, please sheath your weapon. Everyone is in the dark. So when you bump into someone, you mustn't hurt anyone. Friends, do you agree? That should be the way. Those people boomed their replies, and the sound of weapons slashing lessened. Some people who were still brandishing their weapons also stopped after a while. I'd also like everyone to swear an oath. If anyone here hurt anyone else, then he'll be buried here and won't get to see the sky again. I, Taishan's Yu Zhongzhi, swear to this oath first, Yu Zhongzhi said. The rest of the people swore this oath while thinking in their hearts, this priest Yu Zhongzhi is very experienced. If we all work together, there's still a chance that we'd get out of here. Otherwise, we'll be randomly chopping each other, just like before. Very good. Please, say your name. Yu Zhongzhi requested. At that time, people started saying, I'm Hangshan's so-and-so, I'm Taishan's so-and-so, I'm Songshan's so-and-so. But Mr. Mo Da's name was never heard. After these people had finished speaking, Ling Huchong announced himself. I'm Hangshan School's Ling Huchong. The crowd gasped in surprise, and they said, Hangshan's headmaster, Hero Ling Hu, is here? That's very good. Their tone of voice was happy. Ling Huchang thought, I'm just a waste. What's good about me? He, of course, understood. These people knew his martial art was very high, so with him around, their hope of escaping had gone up by many notches. I'd like to ask Headmaster Ling Hu something. Why did your honorable school only send the headmaster here, all by yourself? Yu Zongzi queried. This person was experienced and very careful, so he was suspicious that Ling Huchang was hiding something that might be harmful towards them. When Ling Huchang came out of Huashan, he did so as Yue Buchun's disciple. Everyone knew about this, but as they were trapped inside this mountain cave, from amongst the hundreds of disciples from Huashan and Hangshan, he was the only person there who belonged to either. It was unavoidable that people would suspect him. Clamor, okay. DD is giving me the definitions. Clamor, loud and confused noise, especially that of people shouting. Opposite is silence. Chaos is complete disorder and confusion. Yeah, but clamor implies chaos, doesn't it? If there's a big clamor, then that implies that there was chaos. I think I deserve that win. DD. Queried definition? Like ask questions. To query means to ask questions. I have another companion, Ling Huchang replied, and he couldn't help calling out again, Ying. But he had only managed to call out Ying before a thought flashed in his mind. Ying is the Sun Moon Sex's chief's only daughter, and both the righteous and demonical are like fire and water. I mustn't put this thing on top of what's happening already. What? I mustn't put this thing on top of what's happening already. So he immediately shut his mouth. Who has a torch beside him? Please light it up first, Yu Zongzi requested. The crowd cheered loudly. Very good, very good. We're all so muddle-headed. Why didn't we think of that? Quickly, light up the torches. Actually, in the middle of the chaos before, everyone was only thinking of protecting himself. So how could they think of lighting up a torch? Besides, as soon as a torch was lit, that person would be killed instantly by the person next to him. But now he heard many rattling sounds, as some people took out their flint and steel to make fire. Soon after, many dots of flames were seen, and it was very bright in the darkness. The people inside the mountain cave started cheering. Ling Huchang took a glance and saw the surrounding cave wall was full of people. Their bodies and faces were splashed with blood. There were also some who were slowly swiping their swords and sabers in front of their bodies. These people were extremely careful. Even though they had heard everyone swearing an oath, they still didn't believe the person next to them. Ling Huchang took a step to go to the opposite wall, wanting to find Ying. Suddenly, from among the clusters of people, someone shouted, "Move!" 7 to 8 people came out of the tunnel brandishing their long swords and started killing people. What the fuck? Who are you? The crowd shouted, and one by one they drew their own weapons to defend. After some time, the torches had again been extinguished. Ling Huchang shot forward and leapt towards the opposite wall. He felt a weapon hacking from his right-hand side, and in the darkness he didn't know how to block it. He rushed at the ground and heard a dang sound. A saber had clashed with the wall. He thought, this person doesn't necessarily want to kill me. He might just be wanting to defend himself in the darkness. He stayed on the ground quietly. After the person hacked at empty space for a few more times, he stopped. Someone shouted, "Kill all these dogs! Don't leave any behind!" More than 10 people acknowledged this order. This was followed by 6 to 7 people shouting, "It's Zhuo Langchan! Zhuo Langchan!" Then some people shouted, "Master, disciples here." Oh shit. Oh, remember Zhuo Langchan is blind, right? So he must have an advantage in this place where everyone is blind. So was this trap made by Zhuo Langchan and not Yue Buchun? So Li Huchong heard the person barking the order was really Zhuo Langchan. He pondered, why is he here? This trap was set up by this bastard. It wasn't my master after all. Even though Yue Buchun had tried to kill him several times already, the master-disciple and father-son relationship between them had stretched for more than 20 years, and they were deep-rooted in his heart. He simply couldn't forget them. Once he thought that the traitor setting this up wasn't Yue Buchun, he couldn't help feeling happy. He was 100 times happier to die under Zhuo Langchan's hand than to die under his master's hand. He only heard Zhuo Langchan gloomily say, "You still have the face to call me master. You didn't report to me before you went to Huashan. This is deceiving your master and betraying your school. How can our school have such despicable disciples like you?" "Master," a booming voice replied, "disciple got the message that a cave in the cliff of contemplation at Huashan was our own school's wonderful sword art. I was afraid I'd be wasting time going back and forth and telling Master about this first, and the sword moves on the wall would be destroyed by someone, so I quickly came here. After I look at the sword art, I'd of course go back to the mountain immediately and tell Master all these sword arts." "You're taking advantage of my blindness," Zhuo Langchan said. "I know you all considered me useless since long ago. Once you learn these wonderful sword arts, would you still recognize me as your master? Yue Buchun wanted all of you to pledge your loyalties to him before he'd let you come into this cave to look at the sword moves. Didn't this happen?" "Yes, disciples should die," that Songshan disciple answered. "But this is just a temporary measure. Our 5 mountain sword schools have merged into one, and he's the headmaster, so we should also listen to his order. But I never thought this traitor would behave so violently and trapped all of us down here." Another person said, "Master, please lead us to escape from here. Then we'll go find that traitor Yue Buchun to settle our debt." Zhuo Langchan snorted. "Huh, what wishful thinking you have there." He paused for a while, then continued, "Ling Huchong, you're also here. What are you doing here?" "This is my old place. If I want to come, then I just come," Ling Huchong replied. "What are you doing here?" Zhuo Langchan laughed coldly and replied, "Death is imminent, and you're still so rude towards your senior." "You plotted secretly and caused the harm of the world's heroes," Ling Huchong said. "Everyone wants to punish you for this, and you still consider yourself to be a senior?" "Pingzhi," Zhuo Langchan said. "Kill him." Oh shit. Lin Pingzhi is also here. Uh-oh. In the dark. Right, because Lin Pingzhi is also blind. They're both blind. "Yes," someone said in the dark. It was Lin Pingzhi's voice. Ling Huchong was startled, and he thought, so, Lin Pingzhi is also here. Both Zhuo Langchan and him are blind, so these days they must be familiar on how to use the sword blind, using their ears to replace their eyes, their technique on listening to the wind, to distinguish attacks. To distinguish attacks must be good now. In this darkness, the situation is turned. It is me who is blind, while they're the ones who aren't blind. But why are they the enemy? But his back was covered in cold sweat. Also, remember, Ling Huchong promised to protect Lin Pingzhi's life, right? He promised to his younger martial sister. So let's see what he does. Then he heard Lin Pingzhi say, Ling Hu Chong, you're very glorious, and your name is very famous in Jianghu. But today you're going to die under my hands. Ha 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 ha. His laughter was full of gloom. Oh. Ha 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 ha. No ha 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 ha. Step by step he came over. Just then, when Ling Hu Chong and Zhuo Langchan were talking, Lin Pingzhi had heard him clearly, and his position had been given away. The entire cave was quiet, and only Lin Pingzhi's footsteps were heard. With each step of his, Ling Hu Chong knew he was one step closer to death's door. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Wait! This Ling Hu Chong blinded my eyes and caused me to be unable to see the daylight from then on. Let me kill this bastard." More than 10 people echoed what he said, and they quickly walked over. Ling Hu Chong was startled. He knew they were the 15 people who he had blinded on that night outside the abandoned temple. That day, on his way towards Songshan for the merger of the 5 schools, he met those people on the way. Those people had been blinded for a long time, and their abilities to use their ears to replace their eyes must be high. He already couldn't defend against one Lin Pingzhi. Now, with the addition of these 15 people, he was totally outclassed. He heard their footsteps while he quietly slid for a few steps towards the left. Then he heard a few ta-ta-ta noises, as a few longswords were stabbed at the wall where he was standing at previously. Luckily, these 10 or so people attacked at the same time, causing the noise to blend with the footsteps sound, concealing his footsteps. No one knew where he had gone to. Ling Hu Chong stooped down and felt a sword on the ground. He tossed it, and with a clanking sound it hit the wall. Those 10 or so blind men rushed over with their weapons raised, and they started fighting with some people. Shouting erupted, and in a few moments 6 to 7 people were killed. These people didn't have weak martial arts, but they couldn't see a thing in this darkness, so they weren't the match of these blind people. Ling Hu Chong took advantage of this shouting to slide a few more steps to the left. He groped around to feel there was no one around the wall before he quietly crouched down and pondered. Zhuo Langchan brought Lin Pingzhi and those blind men here to do battle in the dark. They're going to annihilate all of us here. But how does he know there's this kind of cave here? As soon as he thought about it, he was enlightened. Yes! That day, little Marshall's sister was on top of the place of worship. She fought using the moves engraved on the wall here. She defeated the masters from Taishan and Hangshan. She also used Songshan's sword art in front of Zhuo Langchan, and used the Hangshan sword art to fight me. Since she came here before, Lin Pingzhi of course knows about it too. As he thought of little Marshall's sister, his heart ached. He heard Lin Pingzhi shouted, "Ling Hu Chong! You don't dare to reveal yourself, pulling in your head and tail. What kind of hero is that?" Ling Hu Chong was angered, and he wanted to get out to fight to the death with him, but he restrained himself. He thought, a gentleman can bend and straighten. How can I get so irritated over him? I haven't fought Ying Ying yet. I haven't found Ying Ying yet. I can't die so easily just like that. He also thought, I once promised little Marshall's sister to tend to Lin Pingzhi. If I come out and fight with him, then get killed by him, that would be unworthy. But it's also not right if I kill him. There are turncoats in this cave, traitors who need to be killed, Zhuo Langchan shouted. Even if you forgive Ling Hu Chong, there is nowhere he can go to. A short time later, clashing of weapons and shouting erupted. Ling Hu Chong squatted on the ground. After a short while, with still no one attacked him, he strained to listen to Ying Ying's voice while pondering. Ying Ying is far more careful and cleverer than me. In the middle of this ambush, she'd definitely not play her chin. She'd definitely not play her chin. I only hope that no sword is being thrust at her. He heard the fighting between the crowd, and those blind men was really fierce. They were fighting fiercely while also hurling curses. The curse, "Scram your granny," was even heard. This "scram your granny" was really grating to the ears. When common people use this swear word, they always say, "go to your mum," or "hold your granny." Sometimes people also use scram your mother bastard, but it was rare to hear someone use scram your granny. Okay, well, thanks for giving us a lesson on insults. Ling Huchong pondered, is this a swear word special to their provinces? After listening for a while, he found that this swear word, scram your granny, was used quite often by a few people. Once this swear word was uttered by both people fighting, the fighting would stop immediately. But if only one person uttered this swear word, then the fighting between them would continue. He immediately understood. So, this is the code for those blind men to distinguish each other. In the darkness, randomly slashing and killing, it was hard to determine friend or foe. Those blind men had determined a code beforehand, and when they started fighting, they would first call out this swear word, scram your granny. When two people cursed the same swear words, they were friends. Otherwise, they would kill their opponents. No one uses this swear word, so this code word was something that the enemy wouldn't use to curse someone with. Once he understood this, he immediately stood up and put his sword in front of his chest. The swearing of scram your granny was getting more frequent, while the clashing of weapons and the shouting were gradually dying. It seemed the people from Taishan, Hungshan, and Songshan schools had been massacred. Ling Huchong had not heard of Ying Ying's voice. He was worried that Ying Ying had been killed earlier, but he was also happy that she didn't suffer under the hands of these blind men. He also thought, the disciples of Songshan must have found out the cave in Huashan contained their own school's wonderful sword art, so they quickly came here to take a look. This behavior is quite common in people, but they didn't have time to report, so Zuo Langchan just decided to kill them all and won't hold back at all. He must be thinking of killing me, but since he can't distinguish anyone, he even killed all his disciples who had only done a little bit of wrong. After some time, the sound of fighting ceased. Everyone, Zuo Longchan shouted, go around the cave and give them another chop. The blind men acknowledged his order. Then the sound of sword slashing was heard going here and there. Two swords were chopping down in front of Ling Huchong, and he lifted his sword to block. Two hoarse voices shouting, scram your granny, were heard, and unexpectedly nobody realized what had happened. After some time, besides those blind men cursing and the clashing of weapons, there was no other noise. But Ling Huchong was still worried, and he nearly cried, wanting to cry out, Ying Ying, Ying Ying, where are you? Stop, Zuo Langchan commanded. Those blind men sheathed their swords and stood still. Zuo Langchan laughed happily and said, those traitors have all been eliminated. These shameless people, just because they wanted to learn some sword moves, they actually swore loyalty to that bastard Yue Bu Chun. That little bastard Ling Huchong must have died under your swords. Ling Huchong, are you dead yet? Ling Huchong held his breath and didn't reply. Pingzhi, Zuo Langchan said, today you've killed the person you hate the most. You must be satisfied. The whole battle was thought of by Brother Zuo, Lin Pingzhi replied. It was wonderfully set up. Ling Huchong thought, Zuo Langchan and him are praising each other. In order to get his evil-resisting sword art, Zuo Langchan is being very polite to him. If you didn't know of another secret path into this tunnel, Zuo Langchan said, it would have been hard for us to get our revenge. But it's the pity, Lin Pingzhi said. In all that confusion, I didn't get the chance to kill that little bastard Ling Huchong myself. Ling Huchong thought, I've never offended him before. Why does he detest me so much? It doesn't matter who killed him. It's all the same, Zuo Langchan replied in whisper. Let's go out, quickly. I think Yue Bu Chun should be guarding outside of the cave now. We should take advantage of the darkness to rush out. Alright, give me a 5-minute break, guys. Be right back. 5 minutes. And we're back. Backy. Good music. That is Chinese. It's definitely Chinese. It is not Dutch. Not Dutch at all. All right. So apparently they killed all the people inside the cave. Like all of the people from the other schools. They just slaughtered them all. Yes, Lin Pingzhi acknowledged. The sound of footsteps was heard as their party entered the tunnel. Sound of footsteps gradually got farther away, and after a while, it was all quiet. Welcome back. Thank you. Welcome back to you. Ying Ying, Ling Huchong whispered. Where are you? His voice sounded like he was weeping. Suddenly, someone from above his head whispered, I'm here. Don't make any noise. Ling Huchong was happy, and both his knees became soft as he sat down on the ground. When those blind men randomly slashed their swords around, the safest place to be was up there, a place where no weapon can reach. This was a very obvious and simple point, but when faced with death, everyone's mind was in chaos and didn't think of it. Oh, so she just jumped up to the ceiling and stayed up there. Ying Ying leapt down. Ling Huchong jumped up and tossed his sword away before embracing her tightly. They were both sobbing happily. Ling Huchong lightly kissed her forehead and whispered, You really frightened me to death just before. In the darkness, Ying Ying didn't avoid it, and she lightly replied, You were cursing people, scram your granny. Nevertheless, I heard it was your voice. Ling Huchong couldn't help smiling as he said, You're not injured at all? No. I heard the Chin's sound before and wasn't worried anymore, but then I felt that I've stabbed a girl and the Chin's sound became broken, not making up a tune, so I thought I wounded you. Later on, there was no sound at all, and I didn't know what happened. Ying Ying smiled. I've jumped up there early on. I was afraid someone might find out, so I couldn't call out to you, so I had to toss coins down to strike that Yao Qin to let you know. Ling Huchong sighed and said, That's how it is. I never knew. I deserve to be hit. Deserve to be hit. He took her hand and lightly hit his own cheeks. You're marrying such a stupid man, Ling Huchong chuckled. This can be considered to be young lady runs' bad luck. I felt it was really odd. If you were the one playing the Yao Qin, why weren't you playing the Song of Peace and Serenity? Or maybe Smiling Proud Wanderer? Ying Ying let him hug her. If I toss coins in the darkness to make the Yao Qin play out a tune, then I'll be a deity. Ling Huchong laughingly said, You are a deity. Ah, look at that. When Ying Ying heard his words were teasing her, she struggled, wanting to get away from his embrace. Ling Huchong tightly held on to her and asked, Later on, why did you stop throwing the coins to strike the Qin? I'm poor. Ying Ying laughingly replied, I don't have much money on me. After throwing a few of them, I ran out. Ling Huchong sighed. It's a pity there's no money farm in this cave. There's also no store here. Young Lady Run has no money to use, and there's no place to borrow money. Ying Ying also laughed and said, After that, I even used my hairpin and earrings. But when those blind men started killing, I didn't dare to throw things anymore, because their hearing are very acute. Suddenly, there was a gloomy, cold laugh coming from the tunnel's entrance. Ling Huchong and Ying Ying gasped in surprise. Ling Huchong's left arm embraced her, while his right arm grabbed the longsword on the ground. He shouted, Who's there? That person coldly replied, Hero Ling Hu, it's me. Oh shit. The voice was Lin Pingzhi's. Then they heard footsteps coming from the tunnel. The blind men had returned. Ling Huchong scolded himself for being so careless. Zhuo Langchan was an old bastard, and he was also very cunning. So how could he just go like that? They must have stayed in the tunnel, listening to the noises inside the cave. If he was by himself, he would have wasted some time before trying to escape. But with Ying Ying and him worrying over each other and delighted over their reunion, he didn't think the enemy could have stayed not far from there and was watching them from the outside. Ying Ying put her hand underneath Ling Huchong's armpit and whispered, "Go up!" The two of them jumped up. Define acute. Where's acute? The hearing is acute. That means they have very good hearing. Their ears are very good. They can hear many, many things. And like having or showing a perceptive understanding or insight. Wait, is that the definition? Yeah, I think that counts, right? But what is this? Present or experienced to a severe or intense degree. This is of a bad, difficult, or unwelcome situation or phenomenon. I don't think this counts. Showing a perceptive understanding. This seems to be related to like understanding. Oh, here it is. Highly developed, keen. There you go. An acute sense of smell. Yeah. Why would I hate the Japanese so much? I don't hate the Japanese. What do you mean? I love Japan. I love Japanese people. Ying Ying had earlier rested on the rock jutting out of the wall, so she knew where it was. In the darkness, she applied the right amount of force to go up and steadily landed on it. But Ling Huchong missed, and he instead landed back down. Ying Ying grabbed his arm and pulled him back up. This rock only jutted out for around 3 to 4 feet. Both of them were crowded, and it wasn't easy for them to steadily stand there. Ling Huchong thought, Ying Ying thinks very fast. Both of us are on top, looking down, so it won't be easy for those blind men to attack us. Those two little ghosts jumped up, Zhuo Langchan said. Yes, Lin Pingzhi acknowledged. Ling Huchong, Zhuo Langchan said, are you going to hide up there for the rest of your life? Ling Huchong didn't reply. He was thinking if he uttered a single noise, then his hiding place would be discovered. His right hand held his sword while his left hand was wrapped around Ying Ying's waist. Ying Ying's left hand was holding a short sword and her right hand was also wrapped around his waist. They felt comforted to be able to be together. They had no regret, even if they had to die right now. Who blinded your eyes? Zhuo Langchan shouted. Have you forgotten it? More than 10 blind men roared and jumped up while randomly thrusting. Ling Huchong and Ying Ying still didn't make a sound, and those blind men stabbed at empty spaces. The second time they leapt up, one of the blind men was only around a foot beyond the jutting rock. Ling Huchong heard the wind around him as he jumped up. He thrust his sword forward and pierced the blind man's chest. The blind man cried out and fell on the ground. With that, the others discovered their hiding place. 6 to 7 people leapt up at the same time, slashing and thrusting their swords. Even though Ling Huchong and Ying Ying couldn't see those blind men, the distance between the jutting rock and the ground was around 20 feet. The people jumping up produced a lot of wind noise, so they were easy to distinguish. They thrust their swords out and killed 2 people. The rest of the blind men looked up and hurled abuses at them. For a while, they didn't dare to leap up and attack. Ling Hucheng could drop his sword down through one of their heads. He could, but he's blind. Well, he can't see, right? He can't see, so he can't really do that. Then he'll lose his sword too. So. A short time later, the sound of wind was heard, and 2 people had jumped up from the left and right. Ling Hucheng and Ying Ying lifted their swords to block. Chung! Chung! 4 swords collided. Ling Hucheng's right hand ached, and his longsword was nearly knocked out of his hand. He knew the person who had attacked was Zhuo Langchan himself. Ying Ying cried out in pain as her shoulder was hit by a sword, and she swayed. Ling Hucheng quickly pulled her in with his left hand. Those 2 people jumped up again to attack. Ling Hucheng thrust his longsword towards the person attacking Ying Ying. Both swords collided, and that person's longsword changed quickly into a slash. Ling Hucheng knew his enemy was Linfamy. There was no time to block the incoming sword, so he quickly lowered his head and stooped his body. He felt the cold wind as Linfamy slashed at Ying Ying. His body was in midair, but he unexpectedly was able to do 3 moves. This evil resisting sword art was truly formidable. Ling Hucheng was afraid he might hurt Ying Ying, so he hugged her and leapt down with her. With his back leaning on the cave wall, he started to slash his sword around. Suddenly, he heard Zhuo Langchan's long laugh. A sword attacked, and with a clashing sound, both swords had again collided. Ling Hucheng was shaken, and he felt a little internal energy coming up from the sword. His whole body involuntarily shook. Suddenly, he remembered of the day when Runwo Xing was at Shaolin Temple, using his art of essence absorbing to suck Zhuo Langchan's internal energy. Who could have known that Zhuo Langchan's internal energy would be so formidable that in just a short time Runwo Xing was frozen? This time he was doing the same strategy again, and to avoid falling into this trap, Ling Hucheng quickly pushed the internal energy out. But suddenly he felt a tremendous energy coming back, and his fingers involuntarily loosened, and his sword flew out of his hand. Ling Hucheng's whole skill depended on a longsword, so he quickly stooped down and felt around the ground for another sword. More than 200 people had died inside that cave, and the ground was filled with weapons, so he could just pick a saber up and hold up momentarily. Ying Ying and he had turned blind in this cave while being attacked by these 10 or so blind men who had turned not blind. It was no luck that they had survived so far, but no matter what, they were unwilling to just give up their lives so easily. After feeling around for a while, he touched the face of a dead person. It was cold and sticky. He hastily hugged Ying Ying and retreated for a couple of steps. Remember, Mr. Moda is presumably still in the cave, right? Maybe he just kept on quiet. I don't think he died. Like, Mr. Moda would not die like that. Zheng, Zheng! Ying Ying brandished her short sword to block the incoming thrusts. This was followed by a cry as the short sword in Ying Ying's hand was knocked flying off. Ling Hucheng was worried. He stooped down again and found something that felt like a short stick. In this critical situation, he didn't have time to think when he felt a strong wind rushing from his front. Another sword had slashed at him. He immediately put the stick up to block. With a cracking sound, that short stick was cut off by the sword. Ling Hucheng lowered his head to let the long sword go past. Suddenly, he saw some light dots in front of him. These light dots were very weak, but inside this dark cave, they were just like a star coming out of the horizon. The enemies' bodies and their swords could be distinguished faintly. Ling Hucheng and Ying Ying gasped at the same time as they saw Zhuo Langchan thrust his sword again. Ling Hucheng lifted his short stick to stab it at Zhuo Langchan's throat, which was exactly the flaw in his sword move. Unexpectedly, even though Zhuo Langchan was blind, his response was still very fast, as he used the move Carp Leaping Over Dragon Gate to leap back while his mouth was cursing loudly. Ying Ying stooped down, picked up a longsword, and took took the short stick from Ling Huchang's hand and at the same time gave the long sword to him. She brandished the short stick, causing glimmering around the cave. Ling Huchang's spirit was greatly roused. As this was a matter of life and death, he didn't hold back. With the curse, "Scram your granny," he killed a blind man. The sword coming out of his hand was much faster than the cursing coming out of his mouth. After swearing 6 of these "Scram your granny," the 12 blind men in the cave had all been killed. Moreover, some of these blind men were slow-witted, so hearing him scream, "Scram your granny," they thought he was one of their own, so why would they need to fight? They had not realized anything when the sword had already pierced their throats, and they were on their way to death's door to see their grannies. Zhou Langchan and Lin Pingzhi didn't understand what was going on. They both asked, "Is there a torch?" Their voices were frightened. "That's right," Ling Huchang shouted as he attacked Zhou Langchan 3 times. Zhou Langchan distinguished the oncoming attack from the wind and managed to block the 3 attacks. But Ling Huchang felt his arm was aching. It was the cold energy coming from the sword again. After a tick, everything was still as he held his sword. After a tick, everything was still as he held his sword motionless. Zhou Langchan couldn't hear the wind from his sword, and he was getting anxious. He vigorously slashed his sword to protect the fatal points around his body. Ling Huchang relied on the faint light coming out of the short stick in Ying Ying's hand as he slowly sent his sword forward and slowly aimed it at Lin Pingzhi's right arm. Inch by inch, it crept forward. Lin Pingzhi was straining his ears, trying to listen to his sword path, but Ling Huchang's sword was slowly going inch by inch, so how could he hear anything? The point of the sword was now only half a foot away from his right arm. With a jerk, it shot forward and hit Lin Pingzhi's right arm's bone and flesh. Lin Pingzhi cried out and dropped his longsword, while his body flew upwards. Ling Huchang stabbed twice and got both of his legs. Lin Pingzhi fell down on the ground, cursing and swearing loudly. Ling Huchang turned around and saw Zhou Langchan. Under the faint light, he saw him gritting his teeth, and his expression terrifying while he was slashing his longsword around. Even though the sword moves he was using were very wonderful, but under the Dugu 9 sword, there was no place that was flawless. Ling Huchang thought, "This person is the one who incited the disturbance in Wulin. I can't go easy on him." With a roar, he brandished his longsword. Zhou Langchan was stabbed between the eyes, throat, and chest. Ling Huchang leapt back for 2 steps and pulled Ying Ying's hand. He saw Zhou Langchan standing there for a long time before falling on the ground. His longsword turned over and stabbed his own stomach until it penetrated all the way through. Both of them calmed themselves down. They looked at the short stick in Ying Ying's hand, but the light was too dim so they couldn't see it clearly. They had no torch on their bodies, and Ling Huchang was afraid Lin Pingzhi might attack them again, so he cut off the tendons in his left arm. Oh shit. Then he went to the dead people's bodies to fish out some flint and steel. After feeling out the second person, that person's bosom was also empty. He thought for a while, then shouted, "Scram your granny! Of course these blind men aren't bringing any flint and steel." Of course. Yeah, why would blind people have anything to make fire with? When he felt the 5th person, he finally found flint and steel and lit up a paper. The 2 of them shouted in surprise. The stick in Ying Ying's hand was unexpectedly a bone with one of its ends cut off to a sharp point. Ying Ying was stupefied, and she threw that bone on the ground. She then laughingly cursed, "Scram your..." She only uttered these 2 words when she felt they were not elegant, so she immediately pursed her lips up. Ling Huchang suddenly understood. "Ying Ying, both of our lives were saved by this divine sex's senior." "Divine sex's senior?" Ying Ying queried. Back then, 10 elders from the divine sect attacked Huashan. They were all imprisoned in this cave without any way of escaping, and they all died with unsatisfied regret. All they left behind were these 10 sets of bones. This thigh bone, I don't know which elder it belonged to. I accidentally picked that one up, and Zhuo Langchan luckily cut a section of it. This bone has this phosphorus light that the two of us can use to see, Ling Hucheng explained. Wait, can someone explain that? What does he mean by the bone has this phosphorus light that the two of us can use to see? Bones don't light up, right? Am I crazy? I don't think bones emit light. Ling Hucheng took a few more papers and lit them up. Then he found 2 torches and lit them up also. I wonder what happened to Marshal Uncle Mo. And he shouted, Marshal Uncle Mo! Marshal Uncle Mo! But there was still no sound. Ling Hucheng felt in his heart that Marshal Uncle Mo cared for him, so he was feeling sad that he had died in this cave today. He glanced around the ground, looking at the corpses, but it was very difficult to search for Mr. Modaz's corpse. He thought, we haven't escaped from danger yet. We can't linger around here. I'll come back later to look for his corpse, and I'll bury him properly. To find phosphorus? Phosphorus is just an element, right? It's an element. I don't know. Phosphorescent? First of all, what phosphorescent means, it's like it glows, right? It glows with the light. Phosphorus elements found on matchsticks. Okay. But then what does he mean by the bone has phosphorus light? They didn't light up the bones, right? They didn't. I don't get it. They form when the phosphorus inside the bones are lit up. I see. But did they actually light up? Wait, hold on. So is this what happened? Is this what happened? Like Zhuo Langchan cut the bone and it made a spark and it lit up the phosphorus? I don't know. I think I'll have to read this over again. I didn't catch that part. I don't think that's what happened. But I guess the bone made some light that allowed them to see. Anyways, when the sword cut the bone, it lit up the phosphorus things inside the bone. Oh, okay. I think I missed that part. Okay. Can that really happen though? Like, I want to try that. I didn't know you could do that. Ling Hucheng turned around and pulled on Lin Pingzhi's chest as he went towards the tunnel. Ying Ying knew he had promised Yue Lingshan to tend to Lin Pingzhi, so without saying anything, she picked up that Yao Qin, which had holes in a few places, and followed behind them. They used the narrow tunnel that had been dug by those elders to go out step by step. Ling Hucheng lifted his sword up to be prepared. He was thinking Zhuo Langchan was very calculating, and since the cave's entrance had been sealed, that he surely would have dispatched people to guard the narrow tunnel. He had to be careful of the guard trying to stop him inside the cave, but after walking all the way through the tunnel, he still saw no one. Ling Hucheng softly opened the stone covering. Ling Hucheng softly opened the stone covering up the entrance. He felt the light dazzling his eyes. The ferocious light inside the cave had gone on for so long that he didn't feel how much time had actually passed, and the sky had actually turned bright. He saw there was no one outside the cave, and he immediately pulled Ling Pingzhi out, and Ying Ying followed him out. There was a sword in Ling Huchang's hand, enough light for him to see. He was at a spacious place. They had really gone out of danger. He sucked in a breath of fresh air and felt unspeakable comfort. It doesn't make much sense, just accept the convenient plot device. Gotcha. When your master punished you before, was it at this cave? Ying Ying asked. That's right. What do you think? Ling Huchang laughingly replied. Ying Ying smiled. I think you weren't here meditating, but you're... She was thinking of saying your little martial sister, but why would she mention Yue Lingshan to make him sad? So she quickly stopped. Grand Marshal Uncle Feng lives somewhere nearby. I wonder if he's doing fine. I've always thought of this. He first said he doesn't want to meet anyone from the Huashan school. But I'm no longer in the Huashan school, Ling Huchang said. Yes, let's go meet him. Huh? Huh? Do they really get to meet him? Ling Huchang sheathed his sword and let go of Lin Pingzhi. He pulled on Ying Ying's hand and went out of the cave. Oh, that's it. And we're done. We're done. 2 more chapters, and we're done with the book. All right. Did you guys like that chapter? That was pretty cool. He killed a bunch of people. He killed all of the blind people that he blinded like a long time ago. He killed Zhuo Langchan, so that guy's gone. He basically maimed Lin Pingzhi, like he cut his tendons of his hands, I think. Yeah, so it seems like Lin Pingzhi might not be able to use martial arts anymore. What else happened? Yeah, that's basically it. We still don't. What happened to Mr. Moda? Yeah, he was in the cave, but now like he's gone. It was magical. You really hope they get to meet him? Yeah, I hope they get to meet the guy too. I want to see him again. See what he thinks about his disciple. How far he's grown. Hey Raymundo, I appreciate it. I'm glad you like the videos. Yeah. That makes me very happy to hear. Good chapter? Yes. That's a sad thought. You don't want it to end. Stories have to end at some point, right? 2 more chapters. All right, let me take a drink, and then we'll end it. Oh shit. Death. A lot of death. You didn't fall asleep. That was good. Awesome. I'm glad you didn't fall asleep. My voice can put people to sleep, as I've been told. All right. All right. Cheers, guys. What's the plan after this? So, we'll finish this story, right? So it'll be 2 more weeks, and then we'll finish this novel, and then we'll start a new one. Okay. The new one is called Tianlong Babu, I think. Yeah, might have butchered that, but the English translation is Demigods and Semi-Devils. Yeah, it's another long one. Okay, so it's very long. It's an epic story. It's a really good story. Yeah. So when we start that one, we're gonna change the time a little bit, right? So right now, currently we start at Sundays at 5:30 p.m. Right? 5:30 p.m. Sundays, Pacific time. So for the next novel, we start on Mondays at 6 o'clock, right? So we'll start on Mondays and then 30 minutes later. So yeah. That is a long novel. That is a very long novel. But to be fair, this is also a long novel. I don't know if that novel is longer than this one, or if this one is longer. Not sure. But anyways, yeah, it's a really good story. I think you'll like it. Think of it, Lin. I could continue smiling proud wanderer indefinitely. How do I continue it indefinitely? Oh, you want me to just add on to the story? Make my own story? Okay. Yeah. I have to write a chapter every week. Oh god. Alright guys. Thanks for joining. I love you. I'll see you next week.